Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Back here for another episode of Coffee with the Critters with yours truly, Dr. Deb Jones.
Good morning, everybody. Happy to be here. Got my coffee. You hear the critters? Yeah, we're good.
Yeah. So we know that that's the new edition,
Sunshine.
Sunshine. So we're going to be dealing with that today.
Yes.
For everybody that is new, my name is Laura Joseph, owner of the Animal Behavior Center. Hi, Tim. Owner of the Animal Behavior Center. We're an international educational center where we teach people. We empower the lives of animals and the people that care for them, and we do that through our live streaming services. The animals really feed off of our energy.
As
and
soon
when
as
I get
we
started,
yeah, that's interesting because they were pretty quiet while even Quincy, while we were setting up, they were pretty quiet. We didn't have much going on.
I know.
And as soon as we get
amped up,
really interesting. Oh, good grief, Quincy. Oh my gosh. Okay.
Well, we teach. I give up.
Okay.
We teach people around the. We teach people around the world how we empower them in the lives of their animals through our live streaming services, and you can find out more about what we do on our website, which is theanimalbehaviorcenter.com. You're always feel free to email me, which I answer all my emails personally, and that is Laura, Lara, at theanimalbehaviorcenter.com. Yeah.
Okay.
So let's just a couple of things before we get started. I know several people have been waiting for this episode. Good morning, Don Davis. Oh my gosh, there's a blast from the past. Good morning. And Judith, Eva, Jennifer, Quentin, Kitty Sharkey, Carol, Carrie, Jim. Hey, Jim, I'll be in touch with you very soon. Susie, Mark, Sandy, Tim. Yeah. Hey, Neil, everybody. Good morning.
Good morning.
Lee, Glorian over in Taiwan. Hi. Regina from about 20 feet away in the house. Hey, Robin up in Canada. Okay, so a couple of things before we get started. You're watching Coffee with the Critters, which is our weekly live stream. We live stream every Sunday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern. I love you too, Rocky. And
he loves me.
Yeah, he does. And if you want to join, if you want to jump on our email newsletter, you can do that. It's right here on our Facebook page. You can sign up, join our email newsletter. We've had a lot of people joining. We've also had, over the past week, a lot of people joining our memberships. Yep.
Awesome.
Yeah, thanks. And a lot of people joining our projects, especially the Parrot Project, which is rocking. Okay, do I have, one last thing I want. Pay attention to our events page. That will be updated, and we're getting ready to launch a new website. That's all based around our memberships and our projects. Let me know if we have any internet connections going on. It's a little slow on our end, but not sure what's happening. We have a new website getting ready to be launched this week, and stay tuned because it's pretty amazing. Last thing, our nonprofit that we started, the Sam I Can Foundation. Right now, we're live streaming our updates and progress with Sunshine, the sulfur-crested cockatoo that we brought here from Best Friends in Utah, where he's still up for adoption. And you can, if you're interested in adopting Sunshine, feel free to email me, but you still have to go through Best Friends Adoption Agency. And you can find out more about the Sam I Can Foundation at our website, samicanfoundation.org. And you can follow us on our Facebook page. Just look up Sam I Can Foundation. And a lot of content, a lot of information, a lot of resources. So there we go.
you go. That was very nice.
Yeah.
Orderly, quick.
Thank
Look at
you.
being all organized.
I've only been doing this for 4.5 years.
You're getting the hang of it. Very nice job.
So Deb has been on here several times, and you can find all the replays here in the videos or on our YouTube station. How many times do you think you've been
Oh
here?
gosh, I'd say maybe 5.
Okay. Okay.
Usually when I come in and we're working on something, we tend to,
Live stream.
you kind of pull me into
Yep.
doing this, which is fine.
Yep.
So yeah, whenever I visit lately, and I visit about every 3 months or so. So
Yeah. Yeah. You got to come see your boyfriend.
Exactly. We
Yours
miss
truly
each other.
that's staring at you.
He's been staring at me ever since I came in. He's a good man. So yeah, I've been here a bunch, but we always have a good time.
Yes, we do.
And we've gotten less and less planning into what we're going to talk about every time we do it. So it's very spontaneous.
Would you call that shaping your behavior?
Maybe. I prefer to be well prepared and organized. Laura, on the other hand, prefers to be quite spontaneous and flexible. So I'm giving up. Whatever. It's like, yeah.
So that's what we're doing today is we're kind of just going on the fly,
Right.
aren't we?
Right. But
Cheers.
We did talk yesterday a little bit
We did.
about these topics because we are getting together this weekend to talk about what we're going to do in our October workshop. Oh, okay. Look at you.
I know.
Again, so prepared. So yesterday,
Really?
Yeah, really. Yesterday we spent the day talking about our topics and coming up with a schedule and an outline. So that made my heart very happy.
Yes.
Because we have a plan. And once I have a plan, I'm much more comfortable. So I said we could fill it in later, but now we know what we're talking about. So I thought, well, we'll talk about the same topics or whatever the heck we want to talk about from here.
But we'll give you like a brief overview and
Yeah.
kind of dive a little bit into the topics we're going
I
to cover.
think so, because they're topics I really like.
And those topics are
Communication,
choice,
and cooperative care.
Yep.
We had C's. We're
Yep.
very alliterative on this
Yep.
thing. Communication with our animals, giving animals choice and the issues surrounding that, and then cooperative care, which has been the thing that I've been working with quite a bit in this last year or so. So communication. Let's talk about communication
Okay.
first.
And if you guys want to look up this, our workshop is about half full.
Yes.
We have limited seating and a few months left. If you're interested, I highly suggest you take a look and reserve your seats fairly quickly.
We are definitely limited by the space in our classroom area.
The space,
And just-
and we like a lot of hands-on training.
Right,
So
to keep it
Yep.
intimate
Yep.
and not get too many people, too much of a crowd going.
Yep.
It's better for everybody. So we're definitely keeping it small, and
we're
I think
having it
people
here at
do
the
a lot.
center.
Mhm.
It's here at the center in Northwest Ohio. And if you want to reserve your seat, you can go to the animalbehaviorcenter.com, click on, I think it's events. You'll see the workshop there. We had 2 people join last weekend. And there you go. Okay. Do we want to get to talking?
Let's talk. So let's start with communication, because that's where we decided to start talking. And we also ended up with, in communication, talking about how the animals are communicating with us.
Which
And
is very
That's-
important.
Yeah, but that's really the first step. We want to go in and start changing their behavior. And before we even get to that point, we need to be paying attention to what they're telling us.
Yeah.
And I said, you are much more the expert on the variety of species because you've worked with so many different types of animals. While I've worked primarily with dogs, and I sort of feel like cats a little bit. That I can start
I've been
to read
watching
them a
your
little
cat
bit.
training.
The cat training is fun and interesting, and observing how at least this particular cat learns, and that process and his body language, and so sort of the amount of time you can have a good session with him. It's very different from the dogs, but I wouldn't say he's not learning quickly. I think for a cat, he's learning very, very quickly. But my expectation for the cat can't be the same as for the dog, can't be the same as for the bird.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And something else about that is your expectation can't be the same from species to species, and our expectation can't be the same within the same species, from
Right.
individual to individual.
Right, because they are all different.
Yep.
And people do a lot of comparing in training animals, I think. It's like, especially when I have students who are all working on the same thing, theirs is not getting something quite as quickly as some other dog is getting it. And so they think there's something wrong with their dog or with the way they're teaching.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's not the answer at all. It's just everybody, every animal learns at a different pace in a different way.
I was listening to a podcast, oh gosh, this was probably 2 years ago, and this was a great analogy. Say you're a teacher.
Say you're a teacher.
Say you're a teacher, and you have a student in your class named Sarah.
Okay.
And then the next year you have a student in your class named Sarah. Do you think they're the same?
That's a very good analogy.
Yeah. We wouldn't
never
do
say that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you have like your sibling, so your older brother one year and then you the next year, there is some comparison there then, because the genetics are the same. So people expect you to be the same, and we know that siblings are not. Even with the same genetics going into it, they're very, very different.
Very different.
Yeah, so it's and it's true of animals. You know, the same puppies in a litter are all very, very different, or can be very different from each other. Consistency is more unusual.
Yeah, you guys been talking about genetics.
Yeah,
plays a big factor
in everything. With a PhD in behavioral psychology, what I would like to be able to say is that learning and experience and environment have a huge effect on behavior. And they do, but you cannot deny the genetics of whatever the animal is or the person is that you're working with. It's going to have some limiting factors.
Which can cause you to, like, one of the questions, and I've got a question down here that I want to address too. Cool. A lot of people will say, have you ever met an animal you couldn't train? No, I have not. But I have had to reach my criteria.
Yes.
We're not going to get to that point, or we're not going to get there through the way I'm doing it.
Right, but we have to adjust. And I think that's where communication comes in again, because I have to pay attention, I'm not just doing things to the animal to change their behavior. I'm taking feedback from them as well about how effective I'm being. And if their behavior is telling me I'm not getting there, then I need to change. I can't just keep doing things the same way over and over again and say, well, it's the animal's fault.
Yeah, and so many people say,
put it all on the animal, when we take pretty much total responsibility for success or failure in training. And failure simply means this isn't the right explanation for this animal to figure out what I want. So there has to be another way. And sometimes you get stuck. I mean, there's times when it's like, I don't know what to do next here. I've tried all my usual things.
Yeah.
And so then we have to brainstorm with somebody.
Yep, you can learn from others. And that's what we do in level 2.
Yes, yeah, a lot.
Yeah,
a lot. That's really fun and interesting, because we see kind of more higher level issues and problems that might develop in ways to deal with those.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's not that you can't train any animal. Everybody's behavior can change, because if your behavior can't change, you'll probably die.
Yes.
That's necessary
for
survival.
Or hit by a car.
Yeah, don't keep doing the same thing that doesn't work over and over and over again.
Right. I'm trying to get into the grocery store, but this door's locked. Try a different door.
Right. Exactly. So we all figure that out, and so do the animals. But it can be challenging, especially when you have an animal with a long history of behaviors that are either undesirable or simply not learning.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So you're not starting at neutral. You're not starting at a baseline. You're starting way down in a hole that's been dug for many, many years, and you've got to get out of that.
Sure.
And move ahead.
And I'm pointing at sunshine. You want to talk long histories of reinforcement for practicing undesired behavior. They're desired from the animal, or they wouldn't exist.
All right.
An animal isn't going to keep doing something if it isn't bringing desired consequences.
Right. It always works for them in some way.
Yep.
However that way might be. And sometimes the way is simply they get rid of you or get you away from them. That can be something a lot of animals
that can be
want.
Right.
That's reinforcing.
That's what I was just doing with Sunshine right in front of them. I was training a foot. Sunshine is a 30 to 38-year-old lesser sulfur crested cockatoo.
Okay.
38 years. So that means, and I've had him for 1 month.
Yeah.
So I have a lot of counter conditioning to do of several undesired behaviors, but I'm looking at him like, what is it that you're doing that I do like that is going to fit for the well-being of everything as a whole here?
Yeah. What can I start reinforcing so that we'll get more of that? Because there always has to be something.
Yeah.
The animal's not just doing everything wrong any more than a person is doing everything wrong. So if we can find any way to reinforce something, it's a good start.
And I don't like if the bird or whatever animal comes here screaming or excessive barking, that behavior exists for a reason because it's been reinforced.
Right.
Somewhere.
Yeah.
And 38 years of reinforcement.
And it doesn't even have to be intentionally reinforced. I mean, it can be accidentally reinforced, or it can just be self-reinforcing. So it just feels good to do it. Gets out some stress or anxiety or whatever the case might be.
Sure.
So it gets stronger. Yeah.
So what I want to do with an animal that's giving that, because it has that history of reinforcement, and it's giving an undesired behavior over and over and over, the more, I mean, I will use differential reinforcement, but the more I extinct, just constantly put in a schedule of extinction, constantly ignoring it, the more frustrated that animal can get too.
Yeah, extinction has its pitfalls, and frustration is a big one. Something that works or that has worked, and now it doesn't work anymore. It's very, very frustrating.
So you need to communicate to the animal or with the animal that there's something else that will now earn you your reinforcer.
Yeah.
And it's usually easy to start with something that the animal already knows how to do that's acceptable to you in your living environment.
Yeah. So.
And with Sunshine, we were able to, I mean, we still work on it, but we've seen a dramatic change. This is an animal that's 30 to 38 years old. Dramatic change in the screaming in less than three weeks.
Yeah, and it's, I think what this makes me think of when you talk about that is you can't just erase a behavior and not put anything in its place. That's not possible. They're going to do something. So if you say, what do I want my animal to do? And the answer is nothing, that's going to be a problem.
Yeah.
Because there has to be some action or activity that they can do.
And another thing I was going to say, a lot of things that can cause frustration because let him go. Peekaboo.
Peekaboo.
Something that can cause frustration if your timing is off is reinforcing silence.
Oh, okay.
You know, so usually with novice trainers or people that are new to behavior modification. I will suggest look for something else to reinforce besides silence.
Yeah, I can see where that would be.
Yeah, because
oh man,
this is an extinction burst. It'll end here probably within a minute.
Yeah, so we'll just let it go a second and see.
Hang on, guys. This is the one I want to address.
Okay. Oh, good.
Move. It's coming. Hang on. There we go. Whoa! Thanks, Rock.
Hey, Rockstar. Goodness.
So when you reinforce silence, it can be tricky. You have to make sure the silence is increasing and the undesired behavior is decreasing.
Right.
And many times people will be like, how do I know if the me reinforcing the silence is working? I was like, do you see the silence increasing?
Exactly. If it's working, you'll be able to tell pretty quickly because you will see an improvement in what you want and some decrease in what you don't want. So we talked about differential reinforcement yesterday. and there being something else that it is acceptable that we could ask the animal to do, so that instead of like getting this long chain of behaviors we don't want and then silence and we reinforce, that's a little tricky because then you end up with this long chain of undesired behaviors. They're quiet, we reinforce it, and they do that over and over and over again.
Yeah.
So we have to be careful about something like that. Like here, if you had gone over and reinforced Rico right after he was quiet, what are you actually reinforcing? That's a whole chain now.
Yeah.
And so you don't want to do that, but we still want to increase the quiet, but maybe increase a behavior along with the quiet, so that there's something else to do.
Because if you're not communicating clearly,
Yes.
the said animal may think that I have to scream for 1 minute and then go and perch.
And you could get that. Yeah, you could increase the duration of screaming pretty easily.
Yep. And
Without
that's
intending to.
confusion in communication.
Yes. Yes. We're not being clear about what we want. You said you had a comment here we wanted
Yeah. Jenny Blaha, that I met out in Long Island a couple of months ago, she says, I think the South Carolina twos, I know what she's talking about, have to be the most unpredictable. And I can never tell what he's thinking. Forget about communicating with them. You already are, Jenny. Hi.
Always
Nice
communicating.
job.
Yeah.
So unpredictability.
It's rare that something comes out of nowhere, totally out of the blue. There are usually signs or precursors, but they're sometimes exceedingly subtle. And I know with a species I don't understand well, I'll miss all of those signs. With most dogs, I see most of the signs because I'm used to them. But even a dog like with a different structure of the face or a different expression or different ears, sometimes you don't see. But there's probably something there. Sometimes all that's there that you see is stillness.
And that's
Stillness
behavior.
is a scary sign.
Yeah.
In many animals because it precedes some reaction. So it could be something as subtle as blinking, changes in breathing patterns.
Shape of the eye.
Yeah, the shape of the eye, because I'm always asking with the cockatoos, because I see what they're doing, but I don't know often what it means.
Yeah.
But first we have to see what they're doing.
Sure.
And if we can't see those signs, we need to watch more carefully and observe more carefully because they are there. I've yet to really see something that happens out of the blue with absolutely no indication that was about to occur. I mean, every once in a while, but it's pretty darn rare.
And that's where the training comes into play. That's how you get to know the animal. I never grew up wanting to be a professional trainer. I grew up loving animals and liking to see them empowered. I like seeing them enriched. And the best form of enrichment that I have found is training using applied behavior analysis and positive reinforcement.
Right. The idea that what we're doing with the animals should be making their lives better. And I don't see, there are times when training does not make an animal's life better, especially if it's not very thoughtful training. It can make things worse instead of better. So whatever we're doing with animals, the idea is that it does give them some control over their environment. It makes life predictable for them. And when life becomes predictable for them, then they relax, they get more comfortable. They're easier and easier to work with. But if we're unpredictable, talk about the animals being unpredictable, people are unpredictable too.
I often say when you label an animal unpredictable, it's often because the animal has been worked with some inconsistency in approaches.
Right.
And the animal often finds us unpredictable.
Right. Quincy's nudging me here. I'm not just moving randomly. She's trying to get me to pet her.
I work with a lot of unpredictable animals labeled as unpredictable. And
yeah. And
cats, I mean, it doesn't matter the species, but if I'm working with an animal that's labeled as unpredictable or I'm having a hard time understanding it, I will work usually off contact, protective contacts, and I start training. And that's how I start learning and understanding behaviors.
Right. Yeah. We have to observe them before we can change anything that they're doing.
Yes.
And if we just go in like I'm the trainer and here's what I'm doing, we haven't really taken our time to understand that animal and what their behavior means.
If you don't take the time and observe, we're likely going to start making mistakes right off the bat, and put ourselves in some pretty dangerous situations.
Yeah. See, we get away with a lot of that with dogs because those dogs are pretty easygoing about the dumb things that we try to do. But then their behavior will tell us that, oh, they're not changing, they're not getting better. But we get away with a lot of very, very sloppy training with dogs. That doesn't make you a good trainer if you can, be a sloppy trainer and your subject kind of makes you look better because they get it.
Right.
It's when you're training those animals that are difficult that you're learning something.
And sloppy training can make us easily label the animal as unpredictable.
Right.
Where we take the responsibility off of ourselves.
Right, exactly. Or just not even sloppy training, but thoughtless training.
Going in without a plan.
Right, and we'll see what happens. Now, sometimes I'll do that, but I usually know my subject pretty well. If I go in and go, let's just see what happens. One of the things that I always like to get from my students, from my online students, is a baseline video. Before we start doing anything, show me what's happening now.
That's baseline, before you start any kind of behavior modification.
Right. So I don't want you to change anything. I don't want you to try to be effective. Just show me what you usually do, because usually you're coming to me because something isn't working. So what is it you're doing? Then I can start to see how to change that plan or reshape it. And sometimes people are pretty close to doing the right thing. It's just a matter of execution that's off a little bit. And something like your timing of your bridge can just be enough that they're not getting what you're trying to get across to them.
There's a communication gap.
Right.
Yeah.
You think you're telling them one thing, but you're actually telling them something else. And the animal will always be clear about what you are teaching them. And if it's not what you wanted, that's where, as a trainer, that's my responsibility. I have to figure out how to make it better. Either my plan is not a good one. So go back to, is this the right approach for this animal? Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. And even if my plan is a good one, am I executing it well? Are my mechanics good? Is my timing good? Is there something with my reinforcement delivery that's wrong here?
Yeah, your reinforcement delivery, and something that's really common is you're not using the animal's reinforcers that they've decided at that time.
Right. Yeah, because we get lazy with reinforcers. In particular with dogs, we just food. And we don't explore the other options. They can be more difficult to supply. But there are so many reinforcers. We're smart to take advantage of any of them or all of them, like attention being a reinforcer. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. Sometimes it's a punisher.
Sure.
Yeah, freedom or movement can be a reinforcer. Activity can be reinforcing. So
options, pace, proximity, tone, rhythm.
Right. So lots and lots of things we can change.
And I often tell people, if you're relying on food as your only reinforcer, it's only going to be a matter of time before you find yourself stuck.
It is. And I think it's just so easy to fall back on because it works most of the time. But it's one of those things that over time I think is less and less effective with many animals, especially if you don't vary your food reinforcers much, or you end up with that animal that's not real food motivated. I always say, if an animal's food motivated, I can train them because that's pretty easy.
Yeah, when you say it's food motivated, I was like, bring it on.
When it's not, I'll train it. Whatever it is, if it'll eat well and it has a good appetite, I can work with that. You get much more creative when that's not going to work. And again, what makes you a better trainer? Having to struggle and try to figure out what will work for this animal.
Yeah.
Not quick success. That doesn't make you a better trainer.
Yep. Ray down in Florida asked, do you find there are still dog trainers using forces training?
Oh my God. All over the place. All over the place. It's still out there.
And pretty strong.
The worst possible advice often. And it's very frustrating because we think we've come so far. And then you hear people suggesting things that are abusive. And it's not about stopping the behavior at any cost unless it's a
Right.
dangerous behavior. But even then, once you have controlled the behavior, then you can stop using a hammer for everything. And you can start trying to figure out how to instill those desired
And
behaviors.
that's going to be a huge part of our workshop.
Yes.
Different scenarios.
Yeah, of how to change behaviors without, well, we're going to talk about management because that's one of the things we talked about yesterday. How to manage a situation, especially a dangerous situation.
Yes.
When you run into a place where you've just got to stop this, whatever this is, from happening. So that is, those things occur. And we have to
That's
make
life.
those decisions, but that's not training. That's emergency management. So once we've done that, now can we set up some better management and be consistent with it? And now let's figure out how to actually change the undesired behavior, you know, if that's possible. There are some times in some situations where you're always going to have to be managing things.
Yep. I mean, we have behaviors here that are on a long-term management. They're just they're never going to go away because once you stop delivering a positive reinforcer for an alternate behavior, desirable behavior by us, the more likely the undesired behavior is going to start rearing its head.
Yeah,
And
so we see this resurgence of the more natural or more reinforcing behavior will keep coming back. So we can't just assume it as well that every animal can be trained out of every behavior, because that's not true either. Sometimes management, careful management and differential reinforcement are going to be our long-term solution.
Yeah.
So everything is not, I'll give them a couple cookies and it'll be better. There are times when that just isn't going to be enough. And it's sort of naive.
Maintenance.
To think,
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to
Oh, no,
interrupt,
that's
but
okay.
that's the term I was looking for.
Yeah. So you're going to maintain
more.
this behavior. You're going to have to maintain conditions so this behavior doesn't happen long term. Yeah, and you see it a lot. People tend to think that dogs in particular should just be able to change. And they'll stop doing what I don't like. But not if you don't change your environment and you don't change what you're doing.
Yeah, and I wanted to say some key things that I would say when you're looking for somebody to work with. I mean, there's still a lot of use of force. There's still a lot of force around this area.
Not everywhere, pretty much.
Yeah.
It's still there.
And a couple of key things I would look out for are, one, if you're looking for somebody working with less intrusive methods, is one that gets me is I work with 100% positive reinforcement. That is impossible. If I see somebody that says I'm working 100% positive reinforcement, I know that you don't understand thoroughly what you're doing.
Because that's not realistic. I'd like to be as positive as possible, but I also then need to be able to look at a situation and go, I've got to do something here. And this may be a situation where I simply have to control this behavior so nobody gets hurt.
Well, and like negative punishment isn't positive reinforcement. And I will use negative punishment in a training session, a temporary timeout from positive reinforcement. That is not positive reinforcement. But how you implement the two together can be a very fast, clear line of communication.
Yes, it should be. So it's not a terrible thing to do something like a timeout. Sometimes that's absolutely the right thing to do. And when somebody talks about being 100% positive, it's often set up as this kind of a straw man argument. Well, you say you're positive, so therefore you can't be effective. It's like, I never said I was 100% positive. Who's saying it are the punishment-based trainers who are trying to make this very clear distinction. We are not saying that about ourselves. We're saying we're going to do our best to be as positive as possible because that leads to the best learning. And that leads to the happiest animal. But I never took an oath that says I will never, ever, ever do something the animal doesn't like.
Yeah.
Because I may have to.
Yeah.
I'm realistic about that. But I find that the better trainer I become, the less I have to do that. The more thoughtful I become about my management and care of animals, the less I have to do something that they find unpleasant.
And using negative punishment and positive reinforcement at the same, I mean, not the same time, in the same training session helps teach contingency. This is what earns positive reinforcement. When you do that, nothing happens. And
Right.
so the animal will learn it's going to go back to what brings the positive
Right.
reinforcer.
And if we're very predictable about providing those reinforcers in certain situations, then the other stuff disappears over time. The unintended, the undesirable stuff will actually go away a lot of times if you are reinforcing the more desirable behavior. You never have to address it because it disappears.
Yep.
Because it's not necessary anymore.
The animal learns what earns reinforcement and what doesn't.
Right. Right.
And another heated topic is, well, not heated because we're not going to make it negate heated is, and I always tell people, no, depending on how you use it, could be a type of positive punisher. Mm-hmm. You want to fine tune your training techniques when you in your communication, your line of communication. Hi. When you find yourself in a situation where you want to tell the animal no, this is what I tell, and it makes people think, and it gets those gears turning. What can you do instead? Right.
What can I tell them to do rather than just don't do anything? Because again, that don't do anything.
Don't do that.
Doesn't work.
Don't do that.
Yeah. And it might be just if my animal is doing something and I can call them to me. Now I've got something that I can reinforce more highly. And that's, I think, a lot better possibility. And I'm also thinking if they're regularly doing something that you don't like, but they keep doing it, you've got to go back to what's the function. What is the purpose of this behavior? They're telling you this behavior is very valuable to me because it does what? What does it gain? If we can figure that out, then we can intervene and be more successful.
Sure.
So it's like, this is gaining you something. So my dog's barking at the window. Why? Exactly. That's my first question is why? Why are you barking at the window?
Because once you answer the why, there's a reinforcement.
Right. Yeah. There's a reason for that. Are they bored? Do they need something else to keep them active and busy? Is this their main form of enrichment, which is true for many animals? Yeah. They're not getting any other enrichment. Are they afraid of something? Are they being overly protective? If I can get a little bit of the why going, then I can look at how to approach it. Okay, that's fine. You go ahead. Good. Again, we always have to stop for animal training at every moment. So she wants to make sure that Rico gets reinforced because it's going well. Okay. Let's see. Here. I don't want to lose anything, so I'm afraid to touch this and try to look at questions because if I completely black us out, bad things will happen. I was going to look at questions, and I'm like, oh, I don't want to touch anything.
Oh, no worries.
Bad.
Okay. When you constantly, here's the concern with using the word no, is people don't tell it, give it something else to do instead. Which if you are like keep touching a candy bar and like Deb, no.
Yeah. It's like, well, what?
Yeah.
I don't, because it could be my candy bar because that's good. So you must mean no to something else.
That great beer we were drinking last night.
Yeah, don't tell me no there. Because there's a lot of self-reinforcement happening with that beer. All right. Now we got them all wound up again.
Yeah, I know.
Okay. Any questions?
So, Melissa makes a good comment here, a point. Positive reinforcement takes focus and forethought by the human, and that isn't as easy as reactive force.
It's very true. Mm-hmm. It's very true. And I think most people who own animals as pets who are not actual trainers and don't care much about training, all they think about is what I want them to stop doing. And they don't go any further than that. So they're doing this, I want it to stop. That's their analysis. They're doing this, I want to make it stop. And for us, that's just the very beginning of how we would analyze it. Go, they're doing this, and I don't like it. Now, what's the function? Can I change something about that? Can I give them an alternate behavior? Can I reinforce something different? Can I change the environment? I mean, we're running through all these scenarios very, very quickly, whereas most people are not. They're just like, make it go right. Yep.
I saw that getting ready to happen because he was giving me desired behavior,
and you weren't,
and I didn't reinforce.
Okay.
I was weighing my options. Interrupt this great conversation. Yep.
Yeah, so now we can't. Now, when you're in the middle of it, you can't do anything.
Yeah.
Now you're kind of stuck because you don't want to reinforce it, and you don't want to reinforce too soon after. So you've got to wait and kind of. Now at the point of this, well, I'm going to have to wait it out.
Yeah, because if we were to reinforce it right now, and I think people.
Quincy tells me. Quincy tells me what.
If we know it, never mind.
Okay, hang on.
And I think I know why this is happening.
Okay.
Because I stood up and started reinforcing desired behavior,
And then
I saw Rico starting to ask for more training,
Okay.
and I didn't do it.
Right. So now he's frustrated about that situation. Yep. And this to me is why I don't have birds.
Yeah.
It's like, whoa, yeah, that's a lot. And especially if they're in your house with you all the time, and you've got this kind of noise level, I just don't think that's for me. I don't think I'd be good with that at all.
And
is that sunshine or Rico? It's everybody at this point.
Yeah.
Even
Sunshine,
Rocky,
Rico, yeah, it's everybody. Except for Coco.
And yes, Quincy was singing along.
Going through another extinction group. Hang on.
It's funny because I find what Quincy does adorable. Like, well, the dog is really cute, but that screaming.
Yeah, so I want to look at what Sunshine is screaming at. And a lot of times she's looking at Rico.
Okay, can you see? Am I there?
Yep, I can see. There's something I was just getting ready to say. Do you imagine that?
Yeah, it's a little hard to remember your train of thought here. What were we talking about before this started?
I know something I was going to say is it's D.F. Skinner said coercion is the main form of behavior control today, and he's still correct.
Oh, yeah.
And when we're raised that way, it's easy for us to revert back to that because it has a history of reinforcement of working.
And it's just so, it's something that most humans learn. That we point out mistakes, we point out errors, we punish them. It's happened to us as kids, and so that's how we approach changing any behavior. Is punishing what you don't like and ignoring what you do like. We do a ton of that. And anybody who's been taught that way knows that's no fun. It's no fun to be punished, but then the things you do well are not reinforced.
And then what behaviors are you actually reinforcing?
Right. Because then we're getting into, well, attention is a reinforcer, and even if it's what we would consider unpleasant attention, it's still attention. Which is why we're not turning around and looking at Rico, because we don't want to unintentionally reinforce anything that we don't want to see continue. So ignoring when we're in the middle of the situation is the best choice. Now, if it were a dangerous situation, that would be something completely different. Sure. But if somebody were getting hurt.
Yep. And that's what we were talking yesterday, putting together the workshop. For example, my mother used to tell me when I was in high school, don't ever cut your hair. It is your best asset. Do you know what I used to do? I would chop all my hair off.
So that wasn't reinforcing to hear that at all.
No, because I always thought, nice job, Sonny Bunny.
Good.
I always thought my best asset was my personality, and maybe I'm wrong.
Whoever told you that?
So I was like, I'm going to shave my head, and
There
I practically did every single time. And you know what her response to me was? Why do you do that? Every time I tell you not to do it, you do it. Identify the reinforcer.
There you go. So there's something going on.
So you think you would stop telling me.
But no.
Nope.
No, we just do it more.
Yep.
And we do that a lot. If something doesn't work, we just keep doing more and more of it rather than changing our approach and doing something different. I think we get very stuck in that rut. And with other humans, we can be very, very punishing. without even thinking about it. We just pick up all the things wrong. I mean, it's taken me a long time as a teacher because I taught college for 20 some years. And what do I get paid to do? To give tests and to tell people when their answers are wrong, and to look at papers that are written and to tell them what's wrong with those papers. And that's kind of the approach. I tell you all your mistakes, so theoretically you stop making them. But that's not often what happens.
Yeah.
We get people who give up.
You can positively punish their attempts, them trying.
Any trying, the right answers don't get as much interest or discussion as the incorrect ones. So we're constantly looking at what's wrong and never looking at what's correct or any sort of improvement. Anytime we're starting to get even a tiny bit better. It's like, well, that was a D instead of an F. We don't say good job.
Right.
Good improvement. We say, well, that was a D. Jeez.
Right.
So we are kind of programmed to look for the things that are wrong. And something I've been trying to do, especially like these last 5 years while I've been teaching online, is to really focus on what's right and how to build on what's right. And you might say, well, sometimes people are doing everything wrong, but there's got to be something in there. There's got to be something I can pull out and start to build on and say, this was good. This thing you did here, this was great. I really like that you did that. Now let's also try this instead of, wow, I can't believe you did that. That was so stupid. We don't say that. We say,
I would love to be in a class where somebody said, Deb, that was just dumb.
Yeah. Well, probably people have told me that from time to time.
I know what I would be like.
It's intense. Yeah, you don't want to try. And we want people to try as well as animals to try. We want them to try to change what they're doing and to do it differently, more effectively, in a way that makes everybody happier. The idea that if we can change the people, the animals' lives get better. And you can't change people if you're insulting them and telling them what's wrong and never telling them that they're doing a good job at anything.
Yeah. We get a lot of people... this is what we do in our projects and our memberships, and you do it in your online classes as well. Yes. I mean, something I hear from the work that I do here at the center is our projects and memberships are very enriching, supportive.
Right, being supportive.
Supportive groups.
Because we know the world is not always very supportive, just in general. So the idea that we can... move from, I kind of think of it more and more over the years, I'm not the expert telling everybody what's wrong with what they're doing. I'm more of a coach who's encouraging them on the right path. Would I do things the way some people do? No. I would do them differently, but I can get that in. I can get that information across without making them not want to talk to me anymore. Right. Without making them feel like they're failures because things have not gone well up to this point. We all have to start somewhere. We're all we all are beginners at something.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I was just listening to a fabulous study on this, and I'm going to screw it up, which was when you point out to an individual that they're not doing it correctly, or you set up scenarios where no matter how hard that individual tries, they cannot do it correctly. And that's what I like about my live streams. That's what I like about working with you, having you as a friend. We talk about our mistakes. We point out mistakes if we make them to show that we make mistakes.
We make mistakes all the time,
too.
Every day.
Because when we don't, we are unapproachable. There people are like, I'm afraid to do this because I'm going to screw it up. No, watch me screw up.
And then you don't do anything. So you get that perfection paralysis going on, especially if you think you're an expert or people look at you as if you're an expert, and then you make mistakes. We do. That's how we learn.
Everybody does.
Yeah. It's okay to make mistakes in your training. It's like, as often it's better to do something than to do nothing, because people I've seen understand kind of the theory of learning pretty well. They've got that, but they're not actually training animals because they're afraid they're doing it wrong or they're going to do it wrong. And you and I both know, get your hands on thousands of animals, as many as you can train. Every time you train one, and every time you make a mistake and you go, oh, I just made a mistake, you've become a better trainer.
Yep.
So making mistakes is fine. Most of
The
them are
key is
not
not to keep repeating them.
the same one in
Mhm.
particular over and over again.
Right, the same one.
Yeah, make new mistakes.
Right.
Because that'll teach you something. If you make new mistakes and they'll fix those, and then and eventually someday you'll go, oh, I'm not making too many mistakes anymore. I think
Yep.
I've got this thing.
And this
People
is
can do that.
this is
Anybody
what we
can do
were
that.
talking about yesterday was you can be as book smart as you want, but if you do
Yeah.
not have the hands-on application, I always say hands-on application is 65% of the learning. That's just me.
Yeah, I don't know percentage-wise, but I came to this having the academic understanding first. I had gotten my degree and then started training animals right when I was in graduate school. So I knew the academic stuff. And I also had professors that really knew the academic stuff well, but they could never train an animal. There was just no way. I actually had one come to my classes who has written books on learning and behavior. And he was terrible with his dog because talking about it, thinking about it, intellectualizing it, all good to know, but you also have to do it. And so the more you can just go, okay, this is supposed to work. The theory says this is supposed to work and it's not working. Now what do I do? Because I'm kind of stuck. Then you're actually getting somewhere. That is what I would say. Just being perfect nobody's perfect at training. They just don't show you what doesn't work.
Right.
And I think because now in the age of the internet, everybody sees everything. And I don't mind showing my mistakes. But if I don't know I made a mistake, that's the problem. If I know I made a mistake, then I'm not showing it because here, I did this didn't work, here's what I tried next kind of thing. That's
Yeah. And a lot of times, I know this is old information, but when you record your own training, you can see your mistakes.
Oh my gosh, so clearly. And you will swear you didn't do what you did, right? You will swear that's not how it happened. And it's there. You have video evidence. It makes a
Behavior doesn't
huge
lie.
difference. Makes a huge difference. If you want to be a better trainer, learn how to videotape yourself with animals, and you will, because you'll be sort of appalled. Like my timing was off. I used inconsistent bridges. I dropped the food. I was catching things too late. You'll just start to see all that, and then you can identify exactly where to fix it. I mean, that's what I do when I look at training videos for people, is I see all these little points where just if you just look at that.
Yeah.
Mark here, mark here, mark here. They're always consistently 2 seconds too late. That's an easy fix. But if you don't know that, you're saying my animal's not learning.
And that's what, feel free to say how you do it with FDSA or with your own work. Nice job, Rod.
Yeah, rock star.
You can sit here and tell me what you're doing, and some of the things you say a certain word, I'm going to think of what it looks like in my head. So what we do in the membership in the projects is upload your vid, show me, because then when I see it, I'm like, bam, right there.
Right. Right. Or what we'll do in the workshop is we'll talk about something and we'll go over all the theory and how it's supposed to be and step by step. And then when we go out to work with the animals, something totally different happens than we expected.
Yeah.
Then our plan, and it's like, okay, we're going to do this, this, and this. And we get out there and it's like, oh, that's not working at all. Or the animal isn't very motivated. And now we have to rethink how we're going to approach it. So yeah, going immediately from a plan to changing that plan on the fly to applying it in a way that'll work. That's how I think you really learn.
And that happens. And this is what we're going to do in the workshop. Is we're going to break out into groups, but we're also going to work as large groups. And that happened last year. We walked out with a plan. Boom, something else was happening.
Right.
And we're like, wait, okay, we're getting some money back. Remember, Sean, how it happened with the feeding of the kids?
With feeding Milo.
Yeah.
Yes. The way,
and we're like, something's going on.
Yeah, because he was sort of grabbing at the food, which he hadn't done before. So then we had to switch and go, okay, we've got to work on him on food delivery because there's clearly something going on here that's causing that, and you don't want a pig grabbing. Right. so it's like, because when I had reinforced it before, it went pretty smoothly. So it's like, okay, it's the mechanics here or the technique or something. And I think when the food got really close to his mouth, he couldn't see it. And he just was like, if we weren't really consistent with how we were doing it, he was worried he wasn't getting it.
That was such a cool experience because it was all about the mechanics. And what we did was just rearrange. We're like, Why is this happening with this one person but nobody else? So we watched what was happening, and what was happening, pigs can't lift their heads very high. What was happening is the food was being delivered high, and Milo was trying to lift. So then we used the range environmental events.
Right.
We
Change the
said,
approach.
show the food delivery coming down like this. Boom, undesired behavior. Gone.
Exactly. And that could have turned into a huge problem
Yeah.
if we weren't paying attention, because you're going to go, now I have a pig that's grabbing at me when I try to feed it. So now I stop trying to feed it because I don't want to get bitten by a pig. That sounds very uncomfortable and unpleasant.
Yeah.
And that was, it's not the case at all that Milo was trying to be aggressive. He was just trying to get his cookie. And we needed to figure out the way to make that happen. And so we had to stop, whatever the lesson was, I don't even remember. Whatever we were supposed to be doing, training him to do some new behavior.
I think we were doing recall and getting him to pay attention to who was.
Change that whole lesson on the fly.
Yep.
And that's, again, when you become a better trainer, you can do that.
And you can do it quicker.
Yeah, you realize
Changing
the
on the
problem
fly.
and change it faster. Yeah, then keep doing that same thing that's leading to that same behavior, because the more often they practice that, the more habitual it becomes.
Yep.
And so then you're digging a bigger hole to get out of every time.
And something, like, I know we're coming up on the hour, a couple of more things we wanted to talk about was, and this is going to be part of our workshop as well, just because we're using positive reinforcement doesn't necessarily mean it's a positive experience for the animal.
Correct. Yeah. That what we really the important thing here. It's at the animal's perception of what we're doing. That we froze.
Yep, but we might.
And it's always an unflattering picture when you freeze. You don't freeze like a supermodel. You're just freezing this bizarre.
Like that. We can make fun of the freezing.
God. Yeah. Poor people. I'm sorry. This is so professional. This is sort of how we work.
Yeah.
So yeah, know that going in. It's like it's not very serious, and I don't think training should be serious. I think
Training should be fun.
Yeah, for everybody.
And teamwork.
Mm-hmm.
Fun for the animal as well. And many people forget that aspect.
Right. And we talked about, one of the other things we're going to talk about is the animal having choice. Giving them choices. Now, they can't always have choices, because sometimes what has to be, has to be. But when we can give them options, that is, and one of their options is, do they want to train? Do they want to participate in a training session? They can tell us really clearly if they don't, because they can leave. And so that's about as clear as you can get, or not engage to start the session. And sometimes that happens. You have a plan, you're going to go train, and your aunt's like, no. And then you're like, oh, what? Now I have to go back and figure out why you don't want to work.
Right.
Because
And
that's shows want to work.
Sure. Because studies show if you're actually using positive reinforcement training, it's the animal's preferred form of enrichment, which is why I train.
Mm-hmm.
That is my sole purpose for training. When I'm initiating a training session and the animal walks or flies away from me, that should be a pretty good cue that maybe your training sessions aren't as positive as you think.
Right, and sometimes the animal is stuck with us because they're on a leash or they're in an enclosure, so they don't really even have the choice to get very far away. We haven't given them the option to sort of opt in and go, yeah, I feel like training right now, or you know what, I really don't.
Yeah.
We don't pay enough attention to the signals that might tell us that, because we just want to do what we want to do when we want to do it. And so we push ahead with an animal that's not 100% into what we're doing. And then the training usually doesn't go well after that.
And then you could actually be pairing your training with an aversive.
Exactly.
And positively punishing the very thing you're trying to train.
Yeah, I can't tell you how many times somebody will be like, my dog just isn't interested. And it turns out that the dog was sick or had an injury that was hidden pretty well, but it came out in, I don't want to eat your food. I don't want to do this session. That's going to hurt. And so they're poisoning their whole training session.
Yeah. And then, this is just an hour, and we've got 2 days of information.
And we didn't even get to the whole cooperative care thing.
We didn't even get to the cooperative care thing, but you want to talk about your book?
I could talk about the book really, really quickly. I have a book on cooperative care that I published the 1st of January of this year. So it's relatively new. It's called Cooperative Care, 7 Steps to Stress-Free Husbandry. But if you look at cooperative care and Deb Jones, if you put those into Amazon, that'll come up. the book will come up. It's a very reasonably priced little book.
I have it.
Yeah, a lot of steps that you can go through so that you have an animal that you can fairly easily handle and manage for grooming and for health care needs, instead of fighting with them or overpowering them to do the care that they're going to need on a regular basis. How can we get them to cooperate with us and to be a part of the process? So I talk about that in the book, and I will bring a book for anybody who comes to the workshop.
The pressure's on. Now what am I going to
Yeah,
bring?
you got to give them a pen.
I will give everybody a bird.
Oh, man. No, I don't know
I'm
about
kidding.
that. Everybody leaves with a bird. Okay, so we'll have some good stuff.
Yeah, Melissa's on here and says the book's amazing.
Thank you. I'm happy people like it.
So, on that note, if you need to reach me, you can reach me at laura@theanimalbehaviorcenter.com.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you need to reach Deb, her website is k9infocus.com.
Mm-hmm.
Or you can reach her personally on her email at PLNET, short for planet, right?
Yes, without the A.
Yep,
K9.
K9@AOL.com.
There we are.
Yeah, you
Okay.
guys are very welcome.
Thank
And
you so much.
yeah, don't forget, if you're thinking about signing up for this workshop, you're going to want to do it fairly quickly. Do I even go for the referral program? What I was going to talk about is if you like the work that we do here at the center, we have our memberships, level 1 for companion animals, level 2 more for people interested in applied behavior analysis and getting into the profession. We have our projects, which are species specific. This is all live stream learning online. We have very supportive groups, very educational, very active.
Lots of fun.
Thanks. And we have our referral program. For every 5 people you refer to us here at the Animal Behavior Center that sign up for our projects or our online projects or memberships, every 5 people you get a free consultation. And the referral program is really taking off.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
That's a big thing.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. So thanks. And thanks, Deb.
Oh,
Thanks
thank you
coming
for
again.
having me. I always love to be here.
Yeah.
Always have a good time.
Yeah,
Now we
do.
get to go eat brunch, right?
I know. Can't wait. More food.
We're reinforcing ourselves for working.
Okay, everybody. This will be uploaded for the replay immediately.
Good. Thank you guys all for being here.
And the next time I see you here will be for the
We'll be
workshop
doing
in
the
October.
workshop. Fun. Can't wait.
All right. See you guys.
Bye.